All right, all right. Thank you for those of you joining us for this live stream, Growing Up Fundy, featuring my new friend, David from CVS Podcast. But before we dive in, we're going to hit our really cool theme song. Let's hit it. I just learned how to do that like 3 streams ago. It's never getting old. It's never gonna get old on my end. But David, thank you so much for joining me on Growing Up Fundy. I was on your channel a few weeks ago, and then you very graciously allowed me to cancel our planned meeting because I was stuck in traffic in Kentucky, and now you're here on Growing Up Fundy. I'm stoked to have you. How are you doing? What's going on? What's new?
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit before going live, and so you have a little bit of idea how my day was going, but it's generally going well, generally going well. And yeah, I'm not just lying to you when I tell you that I like you, I like your face, I like your vibe, I like your
Thanks.
energy, and you were a great guest. And I hope you're not just inviting me on your show out of sympathy, like because you
No,
feel
no.
sorry for me that I'm such a loser. You want to like,
No, no, remember, I invited you first,
oh,
and
that's
then
true.
you invited
That's
me.
true. That's
So
true.
so take that. Yeah, no, I invited you first. No, I actually, I really enjoyed being on your podcast, and I felt like we both really surprised each other the more we talked and got to know. Like, I don't know what you were expecting before I was on your show, but I feel like we learned a lot about each other despite our differing beliefs and things like that. And I just thought it was a great experience, and I really wanted to have you on. Am I calling that wrong?
No,
Did I
yeah,
meet your
absolutely. Yeah,
expectations?
absolutely. You know, the thing about me and my podcast is I deliberately don't get to know my guests beforehand. Like, I mean, because I want to have an authentic meeting of the minds and have that encounter and discover the person and vice versa. And yeah, so yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. And when I go in without expectations, it's better because sometimes I get all hyped up, like if it's a famous person, I might get a wrong idea about them. And I just want to mention, if you'll indulge me, that I did have
Yeah.
one of my heroes on my podcast recently. So last time I had you on, I asked you, is there anyone you'd really like to have on your show and whatever? And so I had one of my heroes, one of my musical heroes on, I think yesterday. And
Really?
he's a British guy from a band that was in the early 70s. So he's 73 years old.
Wow.
And the band only lasted for a couple of years in the early 70s, but it's like one of my favorite bands ever. And so I got to meet him, and it was very special because I had no idea what to expect from his personality, but he was so warm and so charming. And it turns out he's Jewish, but he's married to a Christian girl. So we got to talk a little bit about faith, but most of the time we just talked about music. And the reason I'm telling you this is because, you and I, we talked about Second City TV and comedy and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to always just force the conversation onto Catholicism. I do talk about like tacos and tea with my friend Christopher
Yeah.
Rice. He came on, and so it's just organic.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's interesting too because your interview style is to go in blind, which I think is wild and brave. Whereas I have the complete opposite. I do like a ton of research on everybody I talk to because I like going in with so many questions. I like being like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. And I think that's so interesting that your style is so different, my style is so different, your beliefs are different, my beliefs are different. And yet here we are hanging out for the second time, which I think is cool. Yeah, I remember when you told me that when you're like, yeah, I actually don't do a ton of background research. That like had me shook to the core because I don't know what I would do if I didn't know who I was talking to. What's the most surprised you've ever been by a guest?
The one I just had, the
Yeah,
guest I
yeah,
just had.
yeah,
We
that's
talked about
true.
it before going live, and I just want to publicly apologize if I was rude or anything. Like, it was not my intention, but I got triggered. Like I got triggered because I didn't know what to expect, and he laid a whole bunch of heavy stuff on me, and so
Yeah,
I got triggered, and I was shocked. I was very shocked, and
yeah,
I come from atheistic Satanism. You'll probably ask me about that,
yeah,
and so I recognized a lot of the tricks of the demons in his story, and so I got triggered. So that,
Yeah.
what part of the problem, like he told me that he's done hundreds of interviews, he's told his story hundreds of times, and he said, "Oh, I'm surprised you haven't heard my story because I put it out there so much." And I said, "No, well, I deliberately don't hear it. Why don't you tell me your story?" And then he told me, and I was like, and I kind of put him on blast a little bit, and then but he said he'll come back. He said he'll come back, and we'll have a more calm conversation, and
Yeah.
we'll be
Well, that's
friends.
good.
We'll be
And
friends.
Henry in the comments, Henry Mars wants to know what the name of the band was.
Well, it's a funny name for a funny band. It's Gnidrolog, Gnidrolog, from Britain in the 1972, 1973. I think I have a T-shirt of it here.
That's funny.
Can you see that?
Yeah, there you go. That's bona fide merch.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, and I have the I'm like a total fanboy. Uh, it's very, very difficult music. This is their second album, second of two albums, or two or three albums, and it's very, very challenging, difficult music, which I like. I like the density of it and the chaos of it, and then the resolution and just the tension, and
Yeah.
it's there are elements of jazz and classical because it's progressive rock. I don't know, you're probably too young to know about progressive rock in the 70s, but
I do love rock music. I don't know the difference between regular and progressive rock, though. I'll be honest.
well,
I
in
don't know
the 60s, there was this, the drugs and all this sort of thing, and the psychedelic music, and then
Yeah.
but it was sort of a classic uh, four bar rock sort of base to all the music. And then with all the drugs, that opened up this creativity, and then people started getting bored with the classic sort of compositions of rock music, and they started importing jazz and classical stuff, elements, and breaking the
Yeah.
rules. And I have a rebellious side to me where I like to play with ideas and see where the boundaries are, and it can push the boundaries here and there. And I also like punk rock, which grew out of a frustration with prog rock. So it's psychedelic, prog, and then punk. That's sort of the progression. And that's just sort of a quick note on what prog is. It fits in between
Huh.
psychedelic and punk.
I'm gonna write that down.
And I like all
Prog.
three. I like all three.
Yeah, and I'm also a big fan of like new throwback rock, like Greta Van Fleet. Love Greta Van Fleet. I know they
Okay.
sound exactly like the 70s, but I think they're
Oh,
just amazing.
I'll check it
I think
out.
they're wonderful.
I'll check it
You
out.
should. Yeah, you totally should. They're
I
fantastic.
don't I
Um,
don't like disco, but I do like the new disco. There's a new disco that came out a few years ago, and it was kind of cool and electronic, and
yeah.
it was kind of corny and cheesy on purpose, and I liked some of that stuff that I heard.
Yeah, yeah, I love reminiscent stuff, like stuff that is well aware that it sounds like old stuff, but that's the whole fun of it. That's the point. So, a little bit like turning this kind of back to focus on you, I thought you had a very interesting story, and correct me if I state any of this incorrectly. So you were previously an atheist,
Yeah,
and then you later converted to Catholicism, and now you are a devout Catholic. Correct? Am I
yeah, yeah. I mean,
okay?
the really quick way of outlining it is born and raised Protestant and very loose liberal Protestant Christian home.
Mm,
Up until age 14. At age 14, even though I loved Christ and I loved praying and all of this, going to church and everything, at age 14, one night I had a dream about Jesus, and I woke up and I had lost my faith. And so from age 14, from that moment on, at age 14, for a full 25 years of adulthood, starting with a very dark period of puberty. And I don't know, you've never been a man, so you don't know what puberty is like if you're not getting laid, but it's not very pleasant. And so 25 years of that adolescent frustration. And there was some good stuff too. I met my wife, got married, whatever. But 25 years of atheism and always interested in philosophy. And then I came back to generic monotheism, and then eventually Catholicism. So that's the rough idea.
yeah, and what was it about that dream that had you wake up and think you were just willing to let it all go?
Nothing, absolutely nothing in the dream. Nothing in the dream would tell you that this is the end of your faith. Nothing. It's the opposite. It's a pleasant dream about Jesus waving to me, loving me, waving. But I guess he was waving goodbye, because I woke up and I'd lost my faith, and I said, I was 14, but I said, this is very counterintuitive, that I love Jesus and I had a pleasant dream about Jesus
Yeah.
waving to me,
Hmm.
and yet I've lost my faith. I've lost my faith in Christ and God, and I'm an atheist.
Was
So
it
very bizarre.
scary? Was it like, I guess this is it. This is the rest of my life.
it was just bizarre, because it doesn't add up, but I can't pretend that I still have the faith. Like
Yeah.
you and I talked about this.
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
talked about this. Like
Yeah.
you can't fake it. I'm
Right.
not. I've had people accuse me that I'm just pretending to be Christian. I'm pretending to be Catholic, but I'm not. I can't fake it. Like I really can't. And if you've ever seen me act, like we talked about this also, like I'm okay at improv, but I can't act. I can't act.
Same. Same. I can't act to save my life. Trust me.
So I'm not pretending.
Um,
I'm not pretending to be Christian. I'm not good at. I'm not a good Christian, but I am Christian. And you're not
y-
pretending to be atheist or whatever you are, agnostic.
yeah.
That's it. That's what it is.
Yep. And so in that time when you decided you're like, did you consider yourself atheist at that time, or were you just trying to figure out where you were? Like, at what point were you pretty solid in your beliefs? Was it instantaneous?
In my sort of atheist worldview, after,
Yeah.
yeah, well, it was, as Chesterton famously said, the Catholic writer and wit. He said, that no offense to any atheists out there, but he said
No, go for it.
the problem with atheism is not that you believe nothing; it's that you believe absolutely everything. So that's what I experienced. I was like, oh, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Oh, this is interesting. Oh, what if I mix this
Yeah.
with that? But what about this? And so that was my 25 years of experience, and I enjoyed it. I was
Yeah.
having fun, and I was always curious about the truth, and I was measuring and
Hmm.
weighing truths, and made a lot of foolish judgment calls about, I fell into all kinds of crazy worldviews, like,
Yeah.
but so what I generally say about my period of 25 years of atheism is that there was a lot of agnosticism in there. There was a lot of what I call nice guy agnosticism, where it's like, oh, peace and love and whatever. Oh, you're Christian, that's cool, whatever. Um, and there was also, hey, bread of life, Rebecca's there. Hey. There was also pantheism. There was also
Hmm.
pantheism mixed in there, like, oh, everything's alive and everything's part of God or whatever, this sort of atheist God thing. Like a lot of people today talk about the universe. I'm going to send out my intentions to the universe. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
and I got deep into the new age, and I was like supporting myself traveling on my honeymoon, actually supporting myself and my wife traveling around Europe with no money, but just doing tarot readings, because I was deep into the new age and had all
Interesting.
this new age stuff that was, there were a lot of mystical coincidences and stuff like that, on that part of my journey, the new age part of my journey. And looking back on it, it was like, you know supernatural, preternatural,
Yeah.
demonic, whatever, like a lot of spooky, weird stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And so do you attribute getting involved in that stuff to becoming an atheist, or to feeling like you had to find something? So for example, like, I'm an atheist, but I've never once like needed to delve into any like mysticism of any kind, just because I don't know why, I just not curious about it. But do you think that because you left religion and you became atheist, you were kind of needing to belong somewhere, or like needing guidance, or what do you think that curiosity came from?
no, one thing you should know about my new age period is that it was a very skeptical approach that I had.
Got
I had clients when I would read tarot, and I made my own tarot. It was called Lucky Penny Tarot, because I would take, do you remember the little copper pennies that we used to have?
Yeah.
Um, I took them because it's the only thing I could afford, and they were solid. And I put little decorations. I just painted or drew on paper and put little taped onto the pennies. And I had all the 78 cards of the tarot deck on these pennies, and I would carry them in a little bag that I made. And my wife and I were artists or whatever, so we were just
Yeah.
like traveling around doing the tarot readings. And my wife never did it, but
That's
she
wild.
she she did it for herself, but she would never do it for anyone else. But she sort of exposed me to it, and I learned it sort of very quickly. Like there was something supernatural about the way I just absorbed it, like really quickly. And I was on the beach, and we were living on the beach in Greece at the time, and I just absorbed it and started doing it and making money with it. But I have to tell you, my approach was not woo woo, magic, mystical, whatever. People would say to me,
Yeah.
"Wow, this is amazing! Like you're reading my mind, you're reading my future, you're reading my past, whatever." And I'm like, no, no, this is a psychological trick that I'm using to stimulate your imagination and your memories and your hopes and desires. It's just a trick. It's just a trick. I don't have any gift, because people accuse me of having a gift. I'm like, no, it's no gift. It's a trick. It's just a trick.
Yeah.
But it
Interesting.
doesn't matter, because you are stimulated and you are happy that I told you something about yourself. I didn't tell you anything. I said a bunch of nonsense and you took from it all this meaningful stuff, because you know yourself, you know your wants and desires subconsciously, and it's triggering all this stuff. So I was very, very open and honest, and I didn't try to import any kind of mystical element to it, because I didn't believe in it.
Well, that's good though. That's cool that you're like, I don't believe any of this, but it's making people happy, so I'm just going to do it. I think it's neat that you can admit that to yourself. You're not trying to make it more than what it was or trying to sell it as more than what it is. I think it's interesting. And I've always wondered, when you meet a spouse and you get married under a specific like belief system, like I imagine you were an atheist when you met and got married, how do you navigate becoming religious once again? Was she also atheist? Was she still religious? Like, did she rejoin religion with you? Like, how does that, because that just seems like a big change, especially when one of the things that probably bonded you was your beliefs at the time.
Well, the funny thing, if I can speculate, because I have to tell you, I have to be honest with you, when I talk about
Mhm.
myself and my journey and my marriage and everything else, it's all speculation. It's all speculation.
Right.
Like I'm trying to like remember the story, and I'll remember things wrong, and if I ask my wife,
Yeah. Oh
she'll
yeah.
correct me. Okay, but my
Yeah.
speculation, like, just take it with a grain of salt. Okay, but
Sure.
my vision of what happened is that, we were both, although we had both rejected religion as adults, she was raised Orthodox, I was raised loosely Protestant, but we both were sort of free thinkers and just artists and
Hmm.
whatever. And so, but what we carried with us, I think, was, looking back, I think we carried with us a certain conservatism, certain values.
Yeah.
I'm very prudish about sex, and so is she. And you know, just not, neither of us indulge in substances or anything like that. So pretty boring conservative people, really. But when we were traveling around, or even today, when we walk around town, people are turning their heads and looking like, who are these freaks? Like, especially my wife, because she dresses very flamboyantly. But the impression that you might get from certainly my wife is that this is a very, very progressive, liberal, wild, crazy woman. But I know her, and the thread that I see why we're successful in our marriage and everything else is because there is that sort of conservative set of values. And
Yeah.
this is not to glorify the right wing of politics or anything. It's not. It's nothing. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to
Sure.
do with that. I hate the right wing. I hate the left wing. I hate all of politics. But there are certain values, family values,
Yeah.
that we can have, and I'm sure you have. And so that's the thread. That's the golden thread that made it possible for us to survive 27, almost 28 years of marriage. But it was not easy when I converted. She's Greek Orthodox. She hates the Catholic Church. She hates it with a passion. Culturally, that's just part of their thing. They hate the Catholic Church. So I mean, it was very, very close to divorce many times
Wow.
for years. For years, it was like touch and go for years. And it's only now, I mean, she still hates it, but it's only now where it's like it's calming down, and I think the worst is over, and I think I'm gonna survive. I think I'm gonna survive, but it was
That's
very difficult, very difficult. So my advice to anyone out there, like, if you can marry someone who has the same faith as you, make sure that you're solid in your faith or your worldview, and try to find someone. But because it was very painful, very, very painful. Yeah. So
yeah.
she's slowly. I don't generally don't talk about her too much because she doesn't like it. But
Yeah.
I can't help myself because I love her so much. She's my better half. But
Yeah.
she's slowly, warming up a little bit to God. And she used to think that he was a bad guy, but now she realizes that Satan's a bad guy, and that God's probably good if God opposes Satan. So it's just slow progress in the battle between good and evil. She's starting to take sides of it, which is encouraging.
Interesting. Very interesting. And I had no idea you guys were married for almost 30 years. Like, that's
Yeah.
wild. You don't look like you're old enough to have been doing anything for almost 30 years. That's incredible. So congrats to you guys.
Thank you.
Do you do you think that there will ever be a time in your life where you have another I don't want to say awakening, but where you have another shift in your beliefs. So what is it about your current belief system that makes you feel very, very solid in living by it?
I'm just getting a comment now from my friend Nugloff on my side. He says the video thumbnail is blasphemous because it has that picture that you put of the Blessed Virgin Mary, yourself as the Blessed Virgin Mary with your dog as Jesus.
Oh,
So I don't apologize. I don't apologize for that. That is what it is. I see that kind of thing all day, every day here in Montreal. The artists in Montreal, they love doing sacrilegious art with Jesus and Mary and Joseph, and it's not Catholic. But Sydney is not Catholic.
yeah.
Sydney is not
And I
Catholic. She's not Catholic.
yeah. Yeah, and that was designed as a stand-up album cover for me from one of my friends. So it has nothing to do with the podcast either. It was made a few years back, but yeah,
Yeah,
no blaspheme meant, just a funny design they made.
yeah.
Um,
I only fear bad Catholics. I'm not afraid of Sydney's use of that image and the distortion of the image. I'm not afraid of that. It doesn't what does bother me. I mean, I would rather that the images of Our Lady and our Lord be respected, but it's I'm only gonna push back if it's a Christian or a Catholic doing it. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. So that's
yeah.
why I don't apologize for that.
Yeah, I also think intent as well. Like if the intent is just because I called myself Zilla's mom, so my friend made like a mother and child image, that was literally the intent. It was not to laugh at anyone's beliefs or anything like that, or to talk down on anyone in any way.
Yeah, and I used to be atheist. I used to be a
Mhm.
Satanist. I used to mock the Bible and all those sorts of things. And when I converted, and I will get around to answering your question, by the way, but I just want to address this. When I
Sure.
converted, God did not, reprimand me, or he did not berate me, or did not rub my nose in all the things that I did that I wouldn't do now as a Christian. That's not how it works. That's just not how it works. We're on a
Yeah.
journey. Sydney's on a journey. I'm on a journey. It's just like God
Mhm.
doesn't. God's not worried about that. And
Yeah.
it's all part. It's all part of God's plan. God's using it. Actually, God's using that image for the greater good. That's the way it is. So anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on that. Remind me what your question was before I got
Oh,
sidetracked.
oh yeah. So I was saying, do you think, or if you had to guess, because there's,
A
it's
new
hard to know the
transformation, a
future.
new conversion, or a new thing. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that I will have. I'll become a saint. I'll become holy and good and virtuous, and that I'll actually be a Christian. That's the dream. The dream is like now I'm sort of like, hey, I'm Christian, kinda. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at now, and it's like, oh well, the objective is to actually be Christian. Like that's the goal. And if you take a survey of the Christians that you know and your family and friends and whatever are televangelists, you know that a lot of us are not actually doing it. We're just kind of like, I choose to
Just
be.
with
Like,
emotions.
yeah, and it's like, ideally one day I will be or whatever. Like that's the transformation I'm hoping for. And I'm like, if it's God's will to make me a saint or whatever, but I still feel safe and secure that probably gonna end up in heaven. I hope so, but
Yeah.
the I want to just outline really briefly sort of where my Christianity lies and my Catholicism lies relative to my
Sure.
monotheism. My
Hmm.
monotheism is a certainty. It's a philosophical certainty. So, and there's no active faith. There's no faith. There are absolutely no faith-based beliefs involved in monotheism. But I took a leap of faith into Christianity, and of course, Catholicism is, from my perspective, the fullness of Christianity. And so there are many, many, many faith-based beliefs there that I could be wrong about. And we talked about this last time, how I'm skeptical and
Yeah.
how I don't actively doubt any of the dogmas. I accept them, but I admit that I could be wrong. So that just gives you an idea about what the foundation of the core of my being ontologically, who and what I am and why I feel secure. It's all about God the Father, and then the Trinity, the
Yeah.
Incarnation, all these sorts of things. I do believe them. I do. I do. I'm not pretending. I do believe them. But my faith is not perfect, and there's room for growth, and I'm hoping to be transformed to the extent where I would actually act as though I believed it, right? Because
Yeah.
I could tell you I believe it, but I need to act as though I believe it. So if
Sure.
some Muslims kick in my door and tell me death, I have to convert to Islam or die or whatever, hopefully I'll choose to die. 'Cause that'll be a good litmus test, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, that would be a good fear test. And so, what was it that made you, was it a moment, was it a series of moments that took you from being an atheist to taking the leap and taking the plunge and coming back to Catholicism? Because I can tell you from personal experience, it would take a lot. It would take a whole lot. So, was it a moment that you experienced or something that happened in your life that made you come back?
Yeah, well, I try to keep this brief. I was I'd gone. I was a nice guy, agnostic, atheist, pantheist, blah blah blah, and I'm playing with all kinds of ideas, philosophy, whatever. But I ended up becoming more of a hardened atheist and antagonistic atheist and anti-Catholic, anti-Christian atheist, and then I became a Satanist. And but I was still studying philosophy, and I became, because of my skepticism, I applied radical doubt to everything eventually. Just before my conversion, it was like a project I was engaged in, like doubting everything that can be doubted, questioning my sense apparatus and the sense data that was allegedly informing my visions and all the senses. But so I ended up being a hard solipsist, which means basically I'm a disembodied mind, the mind of the one and only being, the necessary being, God. So I was God, and I thought I was. I wasn't, but I thought I was. And that was a very uncomfortable and awkward place to be, because you still got to get up and go to work and treat your wife right, or
Like, I'm God. I shouldn't have to get up right
yeah,
now. I should
that's
get to
not fair.
sleep in.
So that was kind of a clue that I wasn't God. But anyway,
Yeah.
it was reading Rene Descartes when I realized he helped me out, because he deals very specifically with radical doubt, which I had exercised to
Okay.
get me into that, and he deals with hard solipsism, and he offers a solution, and the solution is, well, come on now. Obviously, you're not God. God is God, and obviously God is good, and this and that. I think so. It's not the type of argument that would convince anyone that wasn't desperate. But I was desperate. I was desperate. So I just leaped on it. I took the leap, and then I explored the rational side of it, and I was a generic monotheist, and then because I wanted to worship God publicly, I started looking into Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And I didn't like Christianity, but God sent me a monk and into my workplace, and I studied under him, and I accepted the truths, the teachings of the church, and I became a Christian. So that's the quick version of what happened.
Interesting. And in any moment, were you doubtful? Were you like, this might not be what I should be doing? Or did it seem like a good idea pretty much the whole time you were dabbling and researching and studying?
Which transition from atheist to monotheist?
Yeah.
Well, I was
Like
just a
just to
total. It was just a total surprise. Like I had no intention of becoming a monotheist. It was just like, I had gone into this. I had been sort of painting myself into a corner philosophically, where it's just like I ended up being God, and it was horrible. It was just
yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
And so it just so happened with my philosophical reading, I started with the pre-Socratics all the way through Socrates, Plato's, Aristotle, all the way through the Stoics and everything else, and ended up, just so happened, like as I went through the Western tradition, I was planning on continuing, but when I got to Descartes, I was a hard solipsist, and he addressed the issue, and it just seems very providential looking back on it. It just addressed all my issues, and I became a monotheist, and I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't consciously looking for it, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so I was,
And
yeah.
what are like the what are, if you had to pick, and maybe there's only one, but I'm out of curiosity, if you had to pick like three key details that are involved in Catholicism that makes you certain that that Catholicism is the path you want to take, and like the I forget how you phrased it earlier, but basically the correct path. What is it about Catholicism that made you choose?
Yeah, well, that's very easy. I always talk about these three steps to Catholicism. The first step is from non-monotheism to monotheism. That
Mhm.
is all about reason, logic, philosophy, uncaused first cause, causality, the contingent versus the necessary, all these sorts of things. No faith-based stuff at all. That's the first step. Second step is, so the first step is reason or whatever, natural reason. The second step is look at history. Because all I realized, obviously, all of the three mainstream religions that are monotheistic, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they all talk about Jesus, they all talk about the Messiah, and
Mhm.
they either accept or reject Jesus as Messiah, but they all talk about the coming Messiah that the Jews prophesied. So what is the story historically? And if you look at history with an open mind, I mean, it's just overwhelming. I did not want to be Christian. I didn't want to be. But looking at history, it's like obvious. It's obvious that it's Christianity. It's not Judaism. It's not Islam. It's Christianity. So, and
What makes it obvious to you in your mind?
well,
Like,
I
what is
mean,
it that
what
you saw
happened?
that
What
made it?
happened? What happened? What year is it? It's 2023 from what? And what happened? What is the story of the Old Testament? What is the story of the New Testament? And where where's the temple? Where's the priesthood? Where's the Jewish priesthood? And what were the prophecies that were made? It's just like absolutely everything about Judaism tells you that the Messiah came. He came 2,000 years ago or whatever it was. So, I mean, that's just obvious. And then, the story of Islam is just, no offense to anybody, but it's ridiculous. It's just a ridiculous retelling of story. It's just like a fabrication. It doesn't add up. If you read from the time period, it just doesn't, it's not true. What they're saying is not true about the history. So, yeah, so it's just, that's history. And then the third step is authority. Once you're a Christian, well, you worship this book, this Bible, but how do you interpret it? And where'd you get it? Where'd you get it? And how many books are in the canon? Like, it's a question of authority, right? You're going to judge for yourself? Well, I interviewed a guy who made his own canon. There are 5 books in his canon because he used his own private judgment and say, well, this can't be good, this can't be good. So he was left with 5 books, only 2 or 3 of which were actually in the official canon of the church. So yeah, you can go that route with private judgment. Go for it. But you're a church of one. You're your own pope and you're the only follower of this sect. It's like ridiculous. Wake up and smell the coffee. It's a false religion that you created. So so reason or philosophy and history and authority, those are the 3 steps. Those are the 3 reasons why I believe that Catholicism is true, but it could be wrong.
So with Islam and Judaism and Christianity, I have found that they seem to equally include equal parts provable history as well as disprovable like stories and things that they claim happened that we so far have not been able to prove happened. What makes Christianity like rise above those exact same historical differences and unprovable like occurrences that they lean on for a lot of the faith-based religion, whereas other religions you can discount them for those exact same reasons? What makes Christianity above the other historical discrepancies?
Well, it's because there's a certain what you need to understand about me. Particular, I'm going to answer for me, and there's a lot of
Sure. Yeah.
psychological context that you need to understand why I. Now, you interview another Catholic, you get probably a different answer.
Oh, yeah, totally. I
Okay.
mean, in your
Yeah.
personal
So
opinion.
I just want to make it very clear. I'm not speaking for Catholics here, but for me, psychologically, I have God the Father. Nothing could take that away from me. So I think I've mentioned this to you before, or maybe not, but it's like,
Mhm.
if I'm wrong about Christianity, I'm not worried about it. I'm really not worried about it. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. If it's Islam, I don't think it is, but if it's Islam, great. If it's Judaism, great. But I'm part of Judaism because Christ grafted the non-Jews into the Jews, and that's, so it's like a package deal. Like I'm a Jew, I'm a spiritual Jew, I'm a spiritual son of Abraham or whatever. It's like I've got the Judaism part, I've got the Christianity part, so it's just Islam. Like, is Islam true? I don't think so. It doesn't look like it. I mean, I could go on for hours about why it's a false religion. No offense to them, nice people, and I believe they worship the same God I do. It's the uncaused first cause. And if you read the medieval Muslim philosophers, they're amazing. They're amazing. They worship my God. They worship my God. And I love them and I respect them. And they're very virtuous, good people. But they're wrong. They're wrong about the Messiah. They're wrong about all kinds of things. They're wrong about the Trinity. They're wrong about the Incarnation. They're wrong. But
So it's the details involved in the actual religion itself that you disagree with, as opposed to who they worship.
you can put the holy books of every tradition, every religion, Hinduism, Sikhism, Scientology. You can put all the books together, and you can use sort of a rational, critical theory, and I don't think that's going to make you Christian. I don't think that's going to make you Christian. I really don't.
Got it.
I really don't. Like, I mean, I only believe in the gospel because of the authority of the Catholic Church. That's what St. Augustine said. He said, I would not believe in the gospel were it not for the authority of the Catholic Church. So it's very important for my Christian listeners to understand that I would not believe the crazy stories in the Bible were it not for the authority of the Catholic Church. Period. And there's so much in the Bible that bothers me and that's not easy to understand and that seems wrong. But the difference is, like, I mean, I also knew that that was also my opinion when I was an atheist. But the difference now is I submit to Christ and his church, and I believe there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for all that stuff, which seems so weird and seems so bad in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. All the stuff that I can't explain to you and I can't give you a good justification for it other than reaching back to some basic principles. Well, God is good and he wouldn't do anything evil and whatever. So, I mean, it's like I'm very comfortable and secure in the fact that I don't know how to make sense of the Bible. And it's part of the
Yeah.
consequence of original sin. Like we're confused.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
confused. I'm very confused.
And I definitely think there is value in saying, and we've talked about this before for sure, in saying I have no idea. We talked on your episode a lot about like how it's a lot easier to, in my opinion anyway, to trust people who admit when they have no idea. They're just going with their gut or whatever. They've seen what they need to see to believe something, but they don't pretend to know every single solitary thing about that, or they don't have pre-prepared circular answers that don't really go anywhere. So I think this idea that you're like, I don't know, I could be wrong. I could wake up one day and find out that Islam was the correct path I should have taken the whole time. Why is it that you don't worry about that? Does Catholicism have what Protestantism has in terms of like the rapture and hell, or does Catholicism focus on something different?
The rapture, I don't think we have a rapture per se. I don't spend time thinking about all that, the different camps, like, oh, I think this is gonna happen, I think that's gonna happen. And Jesus
Yeah.
said, don't speculate about that. Jesus said, don't speculate about that. So I don't speculate about that. But I mean, I know Christ is coming. I know he's coming, and I know that there won't be any doubt or question about it. Like we're not going to be like, "Oh, do you think it happened last week? Maybe. What are the reasons?" No, we'll all know. That's what Jesus said. Don't worry, you're all gonna know. So I don't worry about the end times. I don't think about it other than worrying, like, am I pleasing God or am I displeasing God? And not in a slavish way. It's like God loves me. He's a nice guy, but he's also just, and I can't offend him with impunity. So yeah, the end times, I'm worried about my death and my salvation. Yeah, sure. But in terms of like the rapture and all that sort of nonsense, like, no, we don't teach that in the Catholic Church. And obviously there's hell and eternal hell. Yeah, I believe in that. That's it's not something that I'm happy about. I'm not happy that people are going to choose to go to hell, but that's the way that the church teaches, is that it's up to each individual with their free will. You choose.
Mhm.
So I mean, I choose heaven. I'm telling you right now, I choose heaven. But then watch me off camera and I'll go and I'll sin, and you say, well, hold on a minute. You told me that you choose heaven, but you're doing a damnable sin. What's going on? And so I'll say, well, the fall of Adam and Eve, and the Satan's tempting me, and I'm weak, and and I could tell you the story, and oh, God help me, I'll be better next time, whatever. Like, it's like, that's the situation that I'm in. Okay, I'm in a fallen world. I'm a sick, fallen, weak human, and it's kind of tempting to say, well, I shouldn't expect too much of myself because I'm just weak and I'm a sinner or whatever. So there is that, and that's what drives the atheist wild, because they don't want to see a weak hypocrisy. They want to see a saint. They want to see someone who's living the Christian life, and I don't blame them. I don't blame the Christians who are making fun of the Christians, because we're pathetic.
To be fair though, I love me some weak hypocrisy. That's my jam. That's my when I was my most devout, weak hypocrisy, that was my lifestyle for sure. Granted, I was like
I
10, but still.
I got a joke for you. I got a joke for you.
Go for it.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Atch.
At you.
God bless you. Did you know that one? Did you know that one?
I figured it was going somewhere like that. I figured it was going somewhere like that. So you talk a lot about how, and when I say talk, I mean like you seem to very much believe that like people are entitled to their own beliefs and to kind of follow their own journeys, and that you do believe at the end of the day what the Bible, what Catholicism dictates will happen to people who choose or don't choose is what's going to happen. Is there ever anything that people believe in, or any ways that they live their life that truly offends you, or that they say about Catholicism that offends you, or are you of the mind that as long as you do what you're supposed to do, it doesn't really matter?
Uh, can you rephrase the question and sort of simplify, maybe give an example, because
Yeah,
I'm not sure what you're saying.
yeah. has there ever been a time where you've been offended by the behaviors of somebody who was not Catholic or
Oh, it's
taken offense?
someone that's not
Mhm.
Catholic.
Yeah, or maybe somebody that was Catholic. Has there ever been a time where you've, like, spiritually been just offended by something they said or something they did or a belief that they held, or do you find that it just kind of rolls off your shoulders most of the time?
Well, I mean, it's a tricky question. It's a tricky question. It's a good question. It's a very good question. I told you that I sort of got triggered by my prior guest, and I like him, I love him, whatever, wish him well. But I was triggered. He's not Catholic, but he was kind of claiming to be both Catholic and non-Catholic, and maybe it was just a
Mhm.
communication problem. Okay, maybe it was just I didn't understand what he was trying to say. Maybe. Okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I got triggered, so that tells me that there's something in me that's not just live and let live and just totally cool, like you do you and I'll do me. No, I'm concerned. I am concerned. I'm concerned. Like, it's like if you came and told me, oh, my friends want me to try heroin and cocaine and go to a satanic sex orgy, I'd say, please don't do that. Like, please don't. You know.
Yeah.
So hit me up if ever you're tempted. But no, I'm being silly. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned about people when they're confused about things they shouldn't be confused about, or when they're making bad decisions, whatever. But I have to trust God. I have to leave it in God's hand, and I'm not the savior. I'm not the savior. I mean, I could be instrumental, I guess, in the graces of the savior, but yeah. And then in terms of, like, I talked to my prior guest about Medjugorje. I said, look, if you see me triggered right now, don't take it personally, because I'm also triggered by Catholics who believe in the demonic false apparitions of Medjugorje. I'm triggered by that. I'm angry, and the reason I'm angry is because I can see it's demonic, and this nice, cute Catholic old lady believes Satan's lies. That drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. So yeah, I'm sensitive, and I'm prone to react and all these sorts of things. But I also want to bear in mind, like, that I can't look for the speck in your eye when I've got a log in my own eye. And I have to understand, what is this righteous, if it is a righteous anger, which I hope it is. If it's a righteous anger, I have to understand what it's about in the big picture. What it's about in the big picture is each and every one of us has a choice to make, fundamental option for or against the source of every good, which is God. So, like, I'm anxious, and I'm a little bit worried about my own salvation, yours, and everyone else's. But how do I deal with that emotionally, or when do I get angry or frustrated? That's something just sort of like I have to try to learn how to manage that, and how to be. I have to do it in a Christian way, and we can read the
Mhm.
lives of the saints, and we could see Jesus flipping the tables. We could see his righteous anger. We could see there's an example of that in many saints where they are angry. And there's a good way to be Christian and to be angry. I don't think I'm mature enough to do that, but so I'm very cautious when I have these feelings right up, well up within me, and a lot of it probably is pride. So I just have to be cautious and focus on myself, and to trust God, and but yeah.
And with your podcast, because CVS stands for Catholic Verses, right?
Yeah, it's not the pharmacy.
Yeah, exactly. CVS podcast. Um, do you interview people as your version of, say, like a mission, or like a I'm trying to think. Baptist, we would call it.
Apostolate, or
Yeah, yeah. Or are you just curious, or what made you get involved in interviewing people, especially people who might risk, like, their thoughts and beliefs, like, triggering those thoughts in you or those feelings in you? What was the initial drive behind starting your channel?
yeah, yeah. Well, like we said before going live, it's very rare that I get triggered. Very rare that I get triggered by a guest. Very rare. Like, it's like I've had 300 guests, and it's happened a couple times, like 2 or 3 times. So yeah, it's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. But the motivation for the podcast is because I'm lonely. I don't have any friends who like to talk about philosophy and faith. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
That was the initial thing. And then I
Mhm.
thought, well, hey, I could be an instrument of God's grace. I can, like, just talk about the truth and listen to people, and a lot of people want to tell their story, and we talked about that. You and I talked about that. And
Mhm.
there's also the fact that I enroll each and every one. Not to boast, okay, I'm not boasting, but I want to let it be known, and I do let it be known that I am enrolling all my guests in a perpetual mass. So it's kind of like an open secret. Like, yeah, you're getting a lot of graces, Sydney. You're getting a lot of graces. So like, do with them what you will, you know. But yeah, it's kind of my cheeky little way of saying like, whatever goes on here on this dimension, it's just fun. It's just like I try to be respectful and listen and learn
Mhm.
something and maybe teach a little something about what the church teaches or whatever. But it's secondary. It's secondary to, hoping and praying that these souls, these precious souls that I meet, will, you know, ultimately be saved. I could be instrumental in the grace, and to show people love and respect, and
Yeah,
listen to their stories. A lot like what you do. You talked about that last
exactly.
time. Yeah.
Exactly. That's my favorite part about it. Now we do have a question from the audience from our friend Rebecca. She wants to know what the Catholic Church teaches about. Is it called Medjugorje? Am I
Just call it
I
call it Club Medj for short.
Club Medj? There we go. Um, she wants to know what's the difference about that versus other appearances of Mary.
It's been condemned. It's been condemned as false, like by all the
So
local
what is
bishops.
that exactly? If you could like define that for me, maybe I'm misunderstanding
Okay,
what that is. Is
okay,
that when somebody sees Mary?
yeah. The apparition is like when you see Mary or Jesus or Joseph or whatever. And so like I could claim like I had a vision of Mary, I had a dream of Mary, and I did, but I didn't go around trying to get it approved because I don't know if it was demonic or if it was just a harmless dream or what it was. I don't know what it was, but we're
When
not
you
making
say
a big deal about
approved,
it. The church needs to, in order for a Catholic to have a devotion, it needs to be approved by the church. So let's say there's some stone in your backyard and you have some weird experience there, and you start thinking that there's something divine happened there, and you start like, yeah, I don't know, doing some devotion or something.
hmm
The church would say, whoa, 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 no, let's investigate what happened. Tell me what happened. What'd you see? What did what'd you hear? Whatever. And they'll investigate and they'll say, well, this is not from God, or they'll say maybe it is, maybe it's not, or whatever. So at the end of the day, they'll say either you can believe in it, you don't have to believe in it, but it's safe to believe in it, or not. And with Medjugorje, they said not. It's not. So you can because it's like a tourist attraction. There are a lot of Catholics going there, and there are masses being said and confessions, and so it's like basically turned into a Catholic place. And so the church is not going to say don't go there. So the church allows people to
Right.
go there, but they just said you can't believe the demonic nonsense that that started it, and it's ongoing. It's an ongoing circus, satanic circus that's ongoing. But there's also the church there and the priests there, and there are good things happening there. So the church allows us to go there, but we can't believe in the nonsense. Whereas
Does
the
that
approved ones, they said it's safe to believe it. It still may not be from God. We don't know, like Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe, all these big ones. It still might not be from God. The church doesn't definitively say it's from God. It just says it's safe. You can read about the visions, and you can have a devotion, and you can say prayers to Our Lady of that place. It's safe to do so, but it might not be true.
So if, say, for example, someone were to see a vision and that vision were to make them feel so good that they got even more involved and invested in their local Catholic Church and
Yeah,
Catholicism,
yeah,
even if that's unapproved, would that still be considered evil, even though it brought them
yeah,
closer to God?
yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah, yeah. It could be. It could be demonic. Like that's
like
what's
would a
happened.
demonic force make you more
Yeah,
religious?
yeah, oh yeah, 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 for
Why? What do you
sure,
think the motive would be
for
there?
sure. To get your soul, Satan wants your soul. So if he can bring you into an external religiosity and going to church every day, and reading your Bible and fasting, and just doing all this incredible stuff, and still win your soul for hell, then that's the best. That's the best, the sweetest victory for Satan. That's the most sweet victory for Satan.
How does that happen? How would he win your soul if you're going to church and like praying and
Well,
talking to
this
God and
because of religious hypocrisy, where you are proud. and you start telling other Christians that they're going to hell and that they're not good enough, and I'm fasting, why aren't you fasting? I'm doing this, why aren't you doing that? That's how you go to hell, right?
I see. I see. So if it makes you
Pride.
basically like an elitist Christian,
Yeah,
then
or anything else. Like there are, no, I don't think there are Catholics who do this, but there are certainly Christians who do this, who say, "Oh, yeah, God told me that I should be having lots of wives and sleeping with my congregants, just the hot young ones, but that's what God told me." So, yeah, you're on your way to hell, buddy. Like, I mean, I don't care that you memorize the Bible. Yeah, great. You're going to hell, right? Or you love money so much or whatever. It's like you're going to hell. So it doesn't matter all the outward trappings, all the show, and you got nice shiny and white teeth and all this. It's who cares? It's
yeah.
like I said about myself. What's my next transformation? Hopefully, I'll become truly Christian. That's what I'm hoping for. So it's the same thing with, it's the same thing with people that go to Medjugorje. A lot of them are good, holy people, and they're going to heaven because they were touched by the sacraments that they found there and the experiences that they had with the fellow Catholics there. Yeah, they're going to heaven because of that. But there are
So
others,
how
there are others who are obsessed with the demonic show, and they are going to be led into pride or into
got it.
greed or into vanity or any number of things. And that's the danger. That's the danger. And it's really, really easy. And it seems like a lot of people haven't considered that. Like they just don't see it.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the problem? Like this person's more religious than ever. They're more religious. Like he's more Catholic than the Pope now. What's the problem? Well, the problem is he lacks humility. That's the problem.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I feel that. Like when you add that element of superiority, I think anyone who's ever been to any kind of church has seen the people who they want to be in the front pew, they want to be there the most and the earliest, and they're the most vocal about it. And like they talk so much about being religious that you're like, I don't know that you're actually religious. I think you're just really arrogant. How would you recommend somebody be able to tell the difference between a genuine like reawakening for Christ versus a demonic devil's trying to get you to do his bidding awakening for Christ? Like how might somebody tell the difference?
In their interior life, like which one am I experiencing? Like, are you asking how someone would do a gut check, or are you asking
Yeah.
how they would check their neighbor to find out what their neighbor is up to?
Like in your opinion, how would somebody do a gut check and be like, is this
Peace. It's about the peace, calm, clarity, lack of confusion. So Satan will excite you. You talked about the feelings. You said, "Oh, what if someone goes to this place and they get all these feelings and stuff?" That's what Satan loves to do. He loves to give you all these feelings. And then you can get led by the nose, like, "Oh, I didn't get the feeling. Oh, well, I need to do more. I need to do this. I need to do that," or whatever. You're just obsessed with chasing that dragon. It's like any other drug. But with God, it's just calm, humility. And again, I'm not claiming that I'm there, but I've read the saints and I know this is what the church teaches, like to have the peace. And like, I mean, if you were in my mind, you'd see I got monkey mind and I'm distracted and I'm seeking, distractions and all that. Like the devil's having his way with me. But my objective, like I told you, is to get rid of that and to not be worldly, to not be attached to all the trappings and all the pomp and ceremonies and all that, and to be a saint, to have that connection and that love. And that's going to bring self-sacrifice. It's going to bring selflessness. It's going to bring virtue. It's going to bring temperance, where I'm not indulging in pleasure. It's going to bring fortitude, where I can suffer without complaining. And to suffer without complaining outwardly doesn't mean anything. You can't even complain inwardly. So if I'm frustrated in traffic or whatever, or can't get my key in the lock after a long day, and my key is wonky, my lock is wonky, by the way. And so when I come in home every day from work, it's like I am frustrated pretty much every day. Like, what the hell is with this mechanism? Because they did it wrong, and so I can't put the key in. I need to put it in and pull it out a little bit, whatever. So all of this to explain, like, I mean, if I don't have God, then that frustration is dangerous. I cannot complain even interiorly. So just to show you how deep and intimate conversion is, if Christ is dwelling in your heart, you're not going to be complaining outwardly. You're not going to be complaining inwardly. You're going to be thanking God for everything that happens, including all the frustrations, all the little things, and even the big things, getting cancer or your loved one dying, whatever. You're going to be thankful to God because you have trust. You understand that this is part of the plan, and that all of the bad stuff comes from sin, and all the good stuff comes from God, and it gives you a lot of peace and a lot of clarity and serenity, and you give. You're a source of grace to others, and people people feel that, right?
Do you think it's possible to be like happy and humble and peaceful and positive for others and not be a follower of Christ?
Yeah, I mean it's obvious. It's obvious that well, I would like to sort of couch my answer in the context of ontology. Everything is good. Everything is good. And certainly every human being is good. So yeah, I mean, you're good, you're beautiful, you got a nice smile, nice eyes, whatever. But I mean, that doesn't mean you're going to heaven. Sorry to say.
Oh
Like
yeah, I'm definitely. I don't think I'm making
I
it, to be honest with you.
like I mean
I think I
it's
ruined my chances long ago.
but you can give me joy and you can brighten my day and all this sort of thing. Yeah, but I can't get lost in that. I need to pray for you, and I'm not worried about you, but
Right.
it's part of my prayer list that, I ask God to work in your life in whatever mysterious way, and we don't know when or why or how and all that. But it's just to make that distinction, like I was saying about the religious fanatics and the religious hypocrites. Like, they looked good. They looked good, and the robes were fancy, and like the speech was nice, and it's like we have to look past that. We have to look past all of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we can see a really, really nice guy, and he's a family man, and he's the pillar of the community, but he works them off. He's killing people left, right, and center. But he's a nice guy. He's charismatic, and he's just wonderful to be around. And you love him. You love him. You love him. You love him. And then you get confused. Well, how does this all work? Well, the way it works is that God doesn't judge as we judge. God sees the heart, and He knows if that person loves Him or not. And if he's out putting hits on his enemies, he's in danger, probably. I mean, I don't want to judge the heart, but I mean,
But what about the people that are like just totally like for like me, for example, I am not a part of the mafia. I promise. As much as I look like a mafioso, I'm literally just rescuing parrots, running a podcast, eating healthy, exercising, and just being nice to people. I don't holler at the barista when she gives me the wrong kind of, dairy product or whatever. Do you think that those people are viewed any differently at the end? So I'll be honest, I don't think they are. I think if the Bible is true and if Christians go to heaven and non-Christians don't go to heaven, I don't think that matters. I don't think it matters like how good of a person you were. If you're not a follower of Christ, you don't make it to Christ's heaven. Like, to me, that just makes sense. But I wasn't sure if like you thought there was any difference there,
yeah,
or if it was possible for somebody to truly be good and like a genuine light in people's lives and not be a Christ follower.
yeah. There's a distinction needs to be made here. I have a very clear answer for you. You cannot get to heaven. You cannot get to heaven with natural virtue, being
Got
good
it.
and nice and all. You cannot. You
Got it.
need faith, hope, and love. You need faith, hope, and love. Now, having said that, it ain't over till the fat lady sings, and you're on a journey, and that's why I'm not depressed and worried about you, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
even talk to you if I assumed, and I'm not allowed to assume that you're going to hell. I have to assume that you're going to make it. I have to. The church teaches me that I have to assume you're
Yeah.
going to make it.
Yes.
But God only knows how. And if you met me when I was an atheistic Satanist, and if you were a Christian at the time, you'd probably say, "Well, I'm praying for you, and I don't know what God has in store for you, but I'm not allowed to assume you're going to hell. So I guess I'll see you in heaven, David." And here we are today. We've flipped roles and whatever, and hopefully, I don't fall back into atheism. But anything's possible. I'm
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah. I
not,
mean,
I'm not hoping for that. I'm hoping to
right.
become more and more faithful. But yeah, just to be very, very clear, you cannot go to heaven without faith, hope, and charity. And also, you can't go to heaven unless you're Catholic. That sounds shocking, but the Scientologists will say the same thing. You can't go to their mystical planet, whatever it is, without being a Scientologist. Everyone says the same thing. They all say the same thing. It's only like the agnostics and the atheists who don't make that claim, I guess. But you know, the trick is to become to
Rebecca doesn't think I ruined my chances, so we're good.
yeah, you have every chance.
So you even think like so you believe that like literally Catholics only. So
Yeah,
even like the
but like the let's say I'll paint a picture of like some really depraved pedophile sinner and likes to rape and torture babies and then eat them and whatever. Okay, so that guy on his deathbed, this extreme case, obviously, he suddenly gets a grace and he says yes to God, and then like he's dying, like he's dying now, and he says yes to all these graces, and then suddenly he's downloading all this stuff. Okay, Mary the Pope and all the Catholic stuff. Bang, yes, 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 thank you God. Bang, and he's in purgatory. Because I don't think he's going to go straight to heaven, but he could. But my point here is that in heaven there's not going to be any like camps like, oh well, I believe in this doctrine about Mary and I don't believe in that doctrine about Mary. No, we're all going to agree about Mary. We're all going to agree about the papacy. And if Catholicism is true, and I believe that it is, if it's true, we're all going to agree about all the Catholic stuff. So we're all going to be Catholic. And it's the same thing if Catholicism is not true. Like, I mean, whatever the truth is, we're all going to be on the same page eventually. That's just a fact. It's not an exclusive club like, oh, you're not Catholic, so you're not going to heaven. No, it's like you're gonna go to heaven, but I got news for you. You're gonna be Catholic once you get there, because that's the
yeah.
way it is.
Yeah, and I also think we talked about intent earlier. I think intent is important there at the end too. Like even though I'm not a Christian, I would think that somebody who has lived a horrible evil life but just happens to say the right prayers at the end likely wouldn't qualify for the same spot as somebody who has been devout their whole life or made sacrifices of any kind, or somebody who's like, oh no, I'm going to do this just so I don't have to pay penance for what I've done on this earth. I want to think that if God is like in this example where God is real, that he would see that. He would be like,
Of course,
like I don't
of
think
course.
you deserve to go to the same place David is going just because at the last second you like got sprinkled with holy water and said what you had to say.
It's
And you brought that up too. You
it's about
said
the heart.
purgatory.
It's about the heart. It's about the heart. God sees the heart. We judge so in a way that is just really rash, and we don't have all the information, and we don't know, and we're not even supposed to judge the heart. Like, we're not even allowed to judge the heart. Like, we can judge actions. Like I told you, if you wanted to start doing heart drugs or whatever, I would say no, I'm not judging your heart. I'm just saying that's objectively evil to do those things. It's
It's
not
a
good for you.
bad idea.
It's not good for you. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
But I'm not judging you, but I'm just telling you, like, if you want to be happy, don't do that. And so it's the same thing with religion. It's like, people are wrong. Everyone's wrong about most things. I'm wrong about most things. You're wrong about most things.
Mhm.
The difference is I had the grace late in life for whatever reason, and I said yes to the grace, and I've got the faith, and, I'm not perfect, and I've got a lot of growing to do in the faith, but, you know, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't go back. And so, I'm happy and excited. And this is just the stereotypical, the stereotype of the Christian. Like they want everyone to come to Jesus. Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, David, I know I've kept you a little longer than I said I would. I apologize. I want to be respectful of your time. But if you had any like last minute message or thought or words you wanted to say to anybody who's listening or anybody who might listen in the future to this episode, what would you say to them in terms of their beliefs, their spirituality, in terms of God, anything at all that you think would be just kind of a parting message for them?
Well, it's very important to know yourself and to be honest with yourself. And I understand that we're all very busy and we're all very distracted, but I want to emphasize just to take the time to be quiet. And it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not. It doesn't matter. Just be honest. Just be honest with yourself, and be quiet. Be quiet and do some introspection. And I'm not preaching and saying like I'm deep and you're not. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we live in a world that's very, very chaotic and distracting. It's hard to find any kind of peace, much less a supernatural peace of God. But the first step, I think, is to know yourself and to be honest with yourself. And if you are insecure about some of your beliefs, it's okay, but just be honest and examine them. That's really what got me to come to God, was skepticism and just being honest. And it's embarrassing, but that's where the humility comes in. That if you're humble, it's easier to accept that that you're nothing, you're just a fool, and you're silly, and you stink, and
I
you're
would actually argue that that's not embarrassing at all. I think true belief comes from when you had the opportunity to go the opposite way and you were exposed to that and you lived it and you tried it and then you decided like, actually, I still at the end of the day this still seems like the right thing for me. I don't think that's embarrassing at all. I think that's just the definition of true belief as opposed to just going with something because you think that's what you're supposed to do.
Oh yeah, well, we've all seen the psychological experiments where it's a double-blind thing, and yeah, they try to say which line, these little lines on paper, which one's the tallest one, and it's the peer pressure thing. It's just like, it's disgusting. We're all prone to that. We're prone to that, people pleasing and going with the group, and it's like, I'm prone to it. You're prone to it. We're all prone to it. But let's try to be honest. Let's try to reflect, and that's the thing. Authenticity, sincerity, and truth and humility. That's my basic message to everyone, and to
Yeah.
myself, too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I meant that more as like go easy on yourself because I think your journey's fascinating. I wouldn't be embarrassed by any of that.
I see.
Um,
I see.
but for anybody listening or watching, I as soon as we're done here, I'm gonna put your Calendly link in the description of the video because you're always looking for guests. You mentioned that beforehand. He uses Calendly to book his guests, so you can click on that link. You can reserve a spot, and you can be on an episode of the CVS podcast, and you guys can talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, I guess, religion, interests, things like that, beliefs. And it's a great experience. I was a guest on David's podcast, had a wonderful time. David, I hope you felt respected and listened to on my podcast as well.
Of course, yeah. So, yeah, I welcome anyone onto my podcast. It's about you. Who are you? What do you believe? And why do you believe it? And there's no judgment. Like, I mean, like I always poke fun at the Scientologists, but I'd love to have one on. If you're a Scientologist, come on and tell me why do you believe it? Like, I've had Raelians on. They believe in the aliens and these sorts of things. The Raelian religion, it was big here in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and they
Wow.
have the Star of David with a swastika inside of it. You may have heard about this. It's a very controversial symbol that they use. And they had their crazy story and their crazy beliefs and whatever. And I interviewed two of them, and they're very nice, pleasant people. I even went to their cult and I took part in their, their rituals and these sorts of things. And I was very moved by the people there. And I think they're crazy. I think they're wrong, but I love and respect them. So that's my approach with the podcast. I just want to meet you and hear what you believe and why you believe it, and that's it. It's just a sharing, and so everyone's welcome. And I'm always looking for guests, and I actually find it hard to convince people to come on. But take a stab. If you're not shy, come on. And if you are shy, yeah, come on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, still come on anyway.
Exactly.
And we're gonna end this broadcast in 3, 2, 1. Boom. Perfect.
Thank
Awesome.
you so
Well, that was
much.
great.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. That was awesome. That was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I'm definitely going to link your Calendly in the description and hopefully you get some guests out of this. I hope
Yeah.
people seem to really be in the comments. They were really like engaging in your answers and asking
Okay.
questions and
Oh,
making
that's cool.
statements and stuff. I don't know if you could see over on the far right hand side when you click on comments, you can actually watch like the comments roll in live.
Oh no, I wasn't watching that, but I appreciate you having me on, and I'll probably get a couple of guests and maybe a couple of subscribers or whatever. It's not
Yeah.
it's not about the numbers, but I'm always looking for more people to interview. So I really appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time, and you're a very pleasant, open-minded gal. So hopefully we'll
Thanks.
we'll talk again soon. Have you got anyone exciting lined up for the next couple of weeks?
Let's see. I have a couple of scientists coming back